Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to start the next session. The speaker, Ms. Yuki Torii, is a web programmer, translator, and mother of 2 children. She translated books like Girls Who Code, Programming to Open the Future of Girls, written by Reshima Saujani, Ruby's Adventure Series by Linda Lucas, Programming Elixir by Dave Thomas. And next spring, she is planning to publish entry-level programming book for 5th and 6th grader, U and Magic Programming Note for O'Reilly. Her title is Introductory Programming Education starting from Ruby, entry-level book U and Magical Programming Note, my learnings as an author. Please go ahead. Thank you very much for your introduction. My name is Torii. I'm very happy to be here. So this is the last session of the day 2. I hope you are not too exhausted. I will try to speak so that you will not fall asleep. My title is already mentioned, and I would like to introduce myself first. I work for Rails program in Everyleaf Corporation more than 10 years. Besides, I translate books for children, junior high students, and adults, the art-related and technology-related books, and Programming Elixir was translated with me and my husband. Fortunately, I came to write a book entitled You and Magic Programming Note for 5th grader. I'm finally going to publish a book about programming for children. And how to verbalize concept of programming to children was very challenging thing for me. And a lot of effort and skills were necessary. This is something I would like to share with you so that you can learn something from my experience. On top of that, and how we can utilize that experience in my work using Ruby and future education. Let me talk about that book first of all. And I already mentioned this is a book for the 5th grader and 6th grader of primary school. And the story is rather long, but in a word, I can say, girl Yu got her own computer purchased by her parents. This is ordinary PC. I forgot to write. And this is the near future story. This is not the present day, near future story. Therefore, everyone has a computer in near future. And she also got one computer only for herself. She had a great excitement. She could do everything by herself. However, computer doesn't function at all because this is the type of PC she has to program and let it work for her. Now, she wondered what to do. And she doesn't know what to do. And she was frustrated. Then, suddenly, Magic Programming Note appeared, and together with a note, she works with the programming. That is the basic story of the girl. Through this story, children can learn what programming is. And another thing I would like to mention about this book is that we do not refer to specific programming language like Ruby or Python or Scratch. I just would like to describe the generalized idea of what to think and the mindset in doing programming. And there are something like codes, like pseudo codes, but it's just pseudo codes in the Japanese language. That's what I use. When I applied for this World Conference, I applied saying that this book will be published in December 2022, but it was prolonged, and in the spring, next spring, the book will be published. We are very sorry about this difference. And when I applied, I did not mean to tell you a lie. So right hand side, this is a sample of the book. Green color indicates this is a note, and icon is a word by you. This is just a rough idea, and it's going to change, and this is something you can imagine. One feature is that this has a story. This is the entry-level book, but the story. The girl, you, can solve issues around her with programming and computer. So I can say that this is the type of the book with fun. And generally speaking, there are not so many books about how to deal with computer and how to solve issues around readers with programming and computer. I think this kind of thing will be important for future children. So by programming and working the computer, children can think they can create their own world by themselves. So this is the direction I'm heading for. I'm very much proud of the illustration, and it's by Kaori Tsurutani. This is based on the manga, anime, like a BL Metamorphosis. This is very popular one, and even movie rendition was made. So with this beautiful illustration, I think you can actually expand, broaden the image, and it can draw readers into the world of the story. And I have a personal connection, and I happen to ask my friends to introduce this Ms. Kurotani. And another point I would like to talk about with my connection, she happens to be my friend. I asked her. I had a specialist, expert to do the supervision, because this is a story for 5th grader. So when I translated programming Edison, that was Japanese language. However, I need to write the Japanese language which is suitable, understandable to the 5th grader. And Ayaku Uchinami, she's associate professor at Wisho University. She is the vice president of General Incorporated Association Slow Communication. She works over there. Even for the foreigners who does not have the Japanese language fluency or people with mental retardation, for such people, ordinary Japanese language will be very difficult. And how to work with that, how to communicate with them, is one of the interests of her. And she is actually involved in that kind of activity. So I asked her to be a supervisor of my Japanese language because I want to communicate to children. And there's a good news and bad news about supervision, because she actually corrected a lot of my statements. She often said that my way of expression is not communicable to little children. But based on that, I improved my writing and came up with a book. Well, the items covered in this book, you and magic programming note, variables, conditional branch, and repetition, array, and function, all only 5 items are dealt with. So only those, is that all? This is really the basics of basics. You may ask, is that all? But what do you mean, is that all? This is the maximum I can explain. It is because the variable, the 5th grader should be able to understand the variable verbally. Can you do that? Can you verbally explain variable, what variable is to 5th graders? I actually took a look at a lot of books like Ruby program, for primary school kids. I actually checked a lot of books. I think this explanation is okay because there's a PC in front of children and book explains on the assumption of running the program. So if kids can actually use, kids can feel what it means. However, what I'm aiming at right now is something different. Inside the book, programming, simulation of program is done inside the book. And the children should be able to feel. And in order to explain the variable, in order to make the variable perfectly conceivable verbally in a book, information equivalent to one chapter is required. And there are 3 processes.
And first, we need to set a kind of a situation on stage where the story is just going on. And you need to use imagination. And then we just consider the variable as a kind of a concept. But we need to just put them into specific words. And then even those specific words we may have in mind that may be too difficult for teenagers or school children to understand. So that means you need to make them more easier on the plane for them to understand. So first, in order to just explain the variables, I just create this kind of situation or the stage that is about a help point. So the you is expected to help her mother, and then for such kind of a household chores and others, and then she is going to try to accumulate help points. And here, the points equal 3. I think you should understand this kind of a formula completely. However, if you start thinking about what is point and what is 3, and what is the meaning of this symbol equal, I think you have all these understanding already in your mind, but you have to put them into specific words and wording. And then the variable, that is a kind of a name, in order to name given to indicate some data. So that kind of just a word or a verbal explanation necessary for children to understand. And for that purpose, there is some books that is quite helpful. And then this is a book published by Slow Communication that is 13 points and tips to make things easier. So here, this is the list of these 13 points that we would like to cover in my for publishing my own book. However, there is not enough time to explain everything, so I would like to just pick up only four out of these 13. And then the selection of information and the specific explanation and a clear subject and the shorter sentences. And the first selection of information and the specific explanation that is related to structure, and then the subject, clear subject writing, and then shorter sentences that is related to the sentence writing. And then first about information. So help or errand point, yes, there is some story. And then in terms of the variables, I just selected out these kind of topics for variable settings, the permanent data savings and calling, and the importance of variable names and the substitution and the calling of variables and the calculation and the resubstitution of variables. And I tried to explain this thing in my own words. However, again, the supervisor said, no, that is not good for children to understand. So I tried to just translate them into more specific stories. And then, so first the story, then that is easier for them to understand. Then work and the column, perhaps I can use this kind of different tools to explain. And then this is a specific instruction. You should not use analogy. For example, if you say that a variable is like a box or a container, then it is. She said that it is quite difficult, too much difficult for children to just have an image or just envision the image, specific image of the concept, even if you say the variable is a container. So, what should I do instead of that? We can use this kind of illustrations. For example, this is Mr. Turutani's illustration. That is not exact illustration we want to use in our book. However, what is happening, in what way, and so the process of just changing things within some circle or container, that can be explained in this kind of illustration. That is how we want to do. And this is about sentence writing in Japanese. Yes, it is quite difficult to write quite clear and understandable sentences in Japanese. However, as you may know, oftentimes a subject is missing in Japanese sentences. And if there is no subject, oftentimes the readers need to think about what is the subject of these sentences. So that means that is just spending some part of the resources. So that means you need to just put clearly what is the subject in the sentences. I think that is most important point if you want to write something for children. And then shorter sentences. Particularly, you may be Twitter users. Well, oftentimes just you tend to write some background or situation explanation in the first half of the writing or sentences, and then you just start more specific comment you want to say truly. So and then that is on that oftentimes that is just written in a one sentence, but that is not good. You need to make sentences shorter and clear, and then with appropriate conjunctions. And is that truly understandable? I'm not sure, but soon after the publication or the review of the book, actually there is some process of review. That means we are gonna give the actual book a sample to the elementary school children, and then just try to get the feedback from them. That is a quite big challenge. And then this seems to be some time allowed to me, so I would like to slow down a little bit. So this is about the impact of Ruby and Ruby's future. Actually, yes, I just learned programming language. The first language I learned is Ruby. And writing the previous book, I realized that I learned about the variables and the repetition on in a RubyWorld. For example, repetition. If you want to explain the process of repetition, perhaps you may tend to use the array. That is an array of data like this. Then you can just express the repetition. However, that is a kind of a fortunate situation, because Ruby just how can I say, they extract the specific situation and then express them in abstract words. But as I said before, we need to we expected to set a kind of a situation or stage, and then this kind of a Ruby's writing or grammar. Well, actually, the writing a situation or setting up the situation, that is already incorporated into Ruby's command or instructions. So that is already just embedded in Ruby code or Ruby grammar. But you can write the same thing like the right-hand way as well. That means while statement. Something is going to change within this while step, and then that is related to the change of conditions. Well, I may be sounding a little bit ambiguous, but I believe that you understand me. So, Ruby is a kind of a language with a high level of sophisticated just coded situation. Or, as you see on the right hand side, you can use Ruby in this kind of a specific or quite particular, quite specific, and then the explainable way as well. And then so that means depending on the kind of resolution or level of understanding, you can write Ruby in different manners if you want to just let or have a Ruby do the same thing. But this is if the kind of a elementary school children want to just do programming, a kind of a text programming, and that is not yet Ruby. I think that is the reality. And then I'm wondering why that is so, because I think many people, or still there are many children, don't know the existence of a Ruby, perhaps Python or Scratch or JavaScript. I think particularly even without the setting of development system, Java system may be easily just adapted or taught to children. And then at the present moment, there is no Ruby grammar guide that is written in Japanese, particularly in plain Japanese. To my knowledge, there is no such book or Ruby grammar guide available in Japan. And then also, as I said before, actually Ruby is not so easy tool even if you want to use, and that means there is no Japanese or Japanese language-based environment in order to start using Ruby. So that means environment is not yet friendly for Ruby users, particularly if they are beginners. So I hope to create that kind of a environment. That's nothing to do with the book publication, but anyway, I hope to do this kind of thing. But now I have been given to publish a book of programming, so perhaps I can just include some information about Ruby in that book as well. Ruby code or Ruby grammar and others. Yes, there is something more I want to do about Ruby beyond just publication of the book. So first I have to just complete writing the book, and after that I would like to just do something more in addition to just do something to Ruby programming for other people, particularly for children. So this is a kind of a summary I wanted to say so far. So there is a book, and then if there is a website you can write Ruby by reading that book, I think that is a very good welcome situation. And I can just create that kind of a site because I'm a programmer. But still, the issue here is the Japanese language. And then I hope to use that Tsurutani-san illustration as well. Well, I think her illustration is so just attractive and beautiful. And but creating a website and using just especially beautiful illustrations that costs some money, some amount of money that is not available free of charge. So I'm now looking for sponsors for me to be able to do that. However, I've never been just trying to collect a fund from anywhere, so I have no experience of that. And is there any way I can use? I'm not sure. I have no knowledge at all. So if you have some idea, please let me know anytime. So anyway, I hope to just create a RubyWorld website, and then I'm now asking for some amount of money for that purpose. That may be not a good ending of my presentation. However, I'm not talking about money. Yes, I'm a Ruby lover, and I would like to just contribute to the future world where anybody can use a Ruby. So as a part of that process, I'm now writing the book. So that's it. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Torii-san. So I would like to just accept some questions from the floor. If you have any question, please raise your hand.
No questions? I spoke too fast. No, you're okay. Your speed was okay. It seems there are no questions right now. If you want to know more details, please contact her directly. For children, a great book will be made, and brilliant site should be made, and you need sponsors to do that. But seeking sponsor is not everything. I just wanted to introduce the book, but there may be some companies who wants to be a sponsor, or if you know potential sponsors, please let her know. Thank you. Yes, thank you very much. This has been Ms. Torii. Please give her big hands once again. Thank you very much. Very understandable communication is very challenging, but she's working hard for that goal. Now, after this, we are going to have closing ceremony. Could you please wait for a second until everything is set on the stage? Thank you.